And now it is my pleasure to introduce tonight's keynote speaker. Miko Peled was born in Jerusalem in 1961. His grandfather was a signer of the Israeli Declaration of Independence, and his father was a general in the Israeli army in the Six-Day War of 1967. Miko is a writer and activist who speaks nationally and around the world on issues relating to Israel and Palestine. He is the author of The General's Son, Journey of an Israeli in Palestine. He taught karate and operated in Coronado's Martial Arts America for 23 years. And he is the father of Eitan, CHS class of 2012, Duran, graduating tonight, and Tali. Please join me in welcoming tonight's keynote speaker, Miko Peled.
Thank you for that introduction, friends, parents, teachers, and the class of 2014. I can't tell you what an honor it is for me to be here tonight. By the way, if you have a smartphone, turn it on, make sure you take lots of pictures, tweet, put it on your Instagram, post it on Facebook, just make sure you tag me as well. This is a big day and you want to share it with as many people as possible. As you heard, I taught karate here in Coronado for some 23 years. I established Martial Arts America, the karate school here in town. After 23 years, I passed it on to a Coronado High School graduate for whom this is, today is actually the 10th reunion, David Adams. I know that many of you had taken karate lessons with me. Some perhaps even made it all the way to black belt. And there's something I used to say after each belt promotion, and I want to repeat it to all of you graduating seniors of the class of 2014. Be sure to thank your parents and your grandparents and whoever else made this day possible for you. Then, take a moment and congratulate yourselves. I also want you to join me in thanking your teachers. Like you heard, Duran, my son, was graduating today in the class of 2014, is the second in our family to graduate from Coronado schools. Eitan graduated 2 years ago, and our daughter Tali will be in the class of 2020. So as a parent, I want to humbly thank all of you wonderful, dedicated teachers for all that you do. Like you heard, yes, let's give them a hand, absolutely. Yeah. Can't thank you enough. Like you heard also, I no longer teach karate. I'm now a writer, working on my second book, in fact, and giving lectures around the country and around the world, mostly about Israel, where I was born and raised. Like many of you, my father was a military man, an officer, a general in the Israeli army. But although I was born and raised there, I didn't know that my homeland also had another name. That name was Palestine. I had no idea that Israel and Palestine are two names for the same land, and the two nations live on that land. Israelis like myself, who are Jewish and speak Hebrew, and Palestinians who are Arabs, Muslims, and Christians who speak Arabic. We are born, we grow up, we live and die, segregated and unequal. I, as an Israeli, grew up much like you, privileged and unaware of the inequalities and injustices imposed upon Palestinians by my country. And because the country is so segregated, I, as an Israeli, never met Palestinians, and in fact, I was taught that Palestinians are my enemies, only to discover many years later that they're not. My country told me that Palestinians want to kill me and destroy my country, and that I must fear them and prepare to fight them. And I did prepare to do just that during my 3-year mandatory military service in the Israeli army. I met Palestinians for the first time, not in our shared homeland, where I grew up, but here in San Diego. I was 39 years old. here I was in San Diego meeting with the so-called other for the first time as equals. And I found that we are not enemies at all, but fellow countrymen. I was also taught to fear and distrust Arabs and Muslims because they too hate me. And it turns out that they too do not. In fact, it turns out that there is no such thing as they. So I would say to you, based on my experience, to question your country and question your government, but to trust in people. And fear not people who wear a head cover or a beard. Fear not people who call God by a different name, people who have a different skin color or whose eyes are shaped different than yours. Fear not people who are poor or homeless, but reach out, rid yourself of the fear, and you will find, as I did, that trust will take its place, that the barriers between you and others will collapse, and that your circle of friends will grow, just as it happened to me. Now high school is behind you, and you're about to go into the big world and do big things, things that matter and where you will make a difference. Never stand aside in the face of injustice. Never tolerate racism or discrimination. Stand up against war, and never, never accept violence as a means to solve problems. President John F. Kennedy demanded that you ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. But I call on you to demand more of your country, to ask tough questions of your leaders, and to demand that they do more for you as well as for others. Ask, for example, why is it that here in the U.S., which makes up only 5% of the world population and claims to be the land of the free, we have 25% of the world's prisoners? Why is it that almost half of the 2.5 million prisoners in the U.S. are African Americans, though they only make up 12% of the population? Why is it that after kidnapping millions of Africans and enslaving them for centuries, then forcing them to live under racist laws and segregation as though they were less than human, why are their children and grandchildren not compensated for the Holocaust that was inflicted upon their ancestors, but instead are incarcerated in disproportionate numbers? Consider this for a moment. People of color in this country have only been free from legalized racism for 50 or 60 years. Yet they have given us great minds like Thurgood Marshall, great poets and writers like Maya Angelou and Toni Morrison, great leaders like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and great talents like Jimi Hendrix and Whitney Houston, to name but a few. Imagine just how many more contributions people of color could make had they the same opportunities as all of us. While it's true that we have a Martin Luther King Day and even an African American president, the vision of a truly free and just society where racism no longer exists has all but died, and the struggle that began with great men like Dr. King and Malcolm X must be revived. But that's not all. Ask also why your country doesn't do more for the Native American communities, those who survived the genocide by white settlers who stole their land, communities that are dying a slow, agonizing death, living in poverty and cursed by substance abuse. Why are we not doing more for poor immigrant communities who risk their lives to come here, work so hard, and do so much for all of us, yet are treated as less than citizens and live in fear of deportation? Ask why the lessons of the Vietnam and Iraq wars are not learned, wars where countless civilians and thousands of American soldiers were killed, injured, and are now quite often forgotten. I urge all of you to cross the Coronado Bridge, exit on J Street, make a left on Island Avenue, and talk to the countless of homeless people who live there on the street. Ask them how many of them are veterans, how many tours they did in Vietnam, in Iraq, and in Afghanistan, how many of them were injured in battle and now suffer from PTSD and are homeless and forsaken. I promise you, you will be shocked. Ask also why the richest country in the world allows millions of children to go to bed hungry each night. And then I urge you to ask this, perhaps the toughest question of all. Ask yourself, what can I do to make things better? To which of these causes am I willing to dedicate my life? On April 18, 1956, Martin Luther King gave a lecture in front of 26,000 high school and college students who marched on Washington, D.C. They came to applaud the United States Supreme Court decision to end racial segregation in schools. Dr. King ended his speech with the following words: "As June approaches, and with it graduation ceremonies and speeches, you will hear much about careers, security, and prosperity. But I have a graduation thought to pass along to you. Whatever career you choose for yourself, doctor, lawyer, or teacher, let me suggest an avocation to go along with it. Become a dedicated fighter for civil rights. Make it a central part of your life. Commit yourself to the noble struggle for equal rights. You will make a greater person of yourself, a greater nation of your country, and a finer world to live in." End quote. Well, my friends, the class of 2014, this may be a little more than you had expected to hear tonight, so I leave you now with this final thought. You are going out into a world that is made better and more beautiful by your presence in it. Make the most of it and make it a better place. Thank you very much.